even though they were paying Part D premiums continually. And this little gap was, well, big gap, was called the Medicare Part D donut hole. So what the Act decided to do is last year, they tried to give some immediate help by sending $250 checks to any Part D premium beneficiaries who fell into the hole in 2010 with their coverage, even by $1. And some of you may have seen this or know people who got these checks. The next thing the Act is going to try to do to help these people that fall into the gap is beginning last month and continuing throughout this year, there's going to be a 50% reduction or discount on brand name prescription drugs under Part D Medicare. The Act then plans to give similar discounts for generics, phasing those in gradually over the year. They're hoping by 2020 to have completely closed this gap so that if you're a Medicare Part D beneficiary paying premiums for your prescription drugs, the minute you hit that initial coverage limit, by 2020, you should only have to pay a 25% coinsurance from then on. That's the hope. Another major plus under the Act is that there will be some Medicaid and Medicare community and home-based services that are going to be expanded. Right now, a lot of people have noticed that they don't feel ready to move to a facility yet, but there's not necessarily a lot of help options under Medicare and Medicaid while you're staying at home to get some in-home help. Well, the Act is going to try to change that. One of the new ideas they've had is called the Medicaid Community First Choice option, which is supposed to begin in October of this year. And this is going to try to provide some in-home attendance services to individuals who really could qualify for an institutional level of care, but could stay at home if they got the right kind of help, skilled nursing level help. They found that many people prefer to stay in their homes as long as they can, and that it actually is often more economically sound, especially when the government is footing the bill. It actually ends up being cheaper keeping people at home if you've got the right kind of services, as long as they can, before sending them to institutional care. But like anything, with all that good is going to come a little bit of bad. So one thing that most people are probably not going to love about the Act is that there are going to be some increased costs. If you're a Medicare Part B or Part D beneficiary that's considered a wealthier individual or wealthier couple, you're going to pay a higher premium than other people. They also plan to make Medicare payroll taxes higher for wealthier individuals and wealthier couples, and increase the tax on certain unearned income. They're really talking about dividends, investment income. And when they say wealthier individuals, it seems like what they're talking about really is individuals who make wages or income of $200,000 plus every year, and couples who are at $250,000 or more. But it's not necessarily the same for each little tax, so you kind of have to watch that. They also plan to make some changes to those Medicare Advantage plans that we talked about under Part C. The two main things that I would pay attention to, one change is the requirement of uniform payments across the country. The reason this is sort of something to note is because if you're receiving services in, say, Miami-Dade County, where the premiums might be higher, services might be better, versus services in rural Georgia, where the premiums might be lower, services might be less services or maybe not as great, different kinds of providers, you're still going to get the same Medicare Advantage pay rate. So that means that the services and level of care may level off with the payments. I hope that makes sense. Because everything's kind of moving to the same level. They really want to get the Medicare Advantage plans to move closer to the Medicare traditional fee-for-service rate, where you receive a service, you pay one rate for it. If you had a Medicare Advantage plan, you might pay a different rate and receive some different services, and now they're trying to cut that out. The other change is this medical loss ratio of 85%. And what this does is refers to the fact that all Medicare Advantage plans now have to limit the amount that they can spend on administrative and other expenses. So if plan policyholders are getting limited in the amount they can spend on administrative costs, their overhead, probably means a reduction in some services, just because they'll be getting the hit, so they'll pass it along. And in 2013, there's going to be some changes to the way you can deduct for certain medical expenses on your federal taxes. One thing to note is that if you're 65 or older, you're going to continue to be able to deduct at the 7.5% rate, which is what it is right now, through 2016. After 2016, who knows? But if you're under 65, starting in 2013, you can only deduct from your federal taxes your medical expenses after they exceed 10% of your adjusted gross income, which is not how it is right now. Okay, I've got a little political cartoon here for you, and this is mostly tongue-in-cheek, but it's illustrative of one of the main critiques of the nationalized healthcare system. One issue is, how are we going to pay for it? Well, the Act attempts to answer some of these questions about payments by putting certain provisions in the Act that are supposed to generate some money to come back to help pay for some of these services. One is those changes in the Medicare Advantage plans that we talked about. That's supposed to save us about $132 million over the next 10 years to help pay for some of these additional services that we want under the Act. The Act also calls for reduced payments to Medicare home health care plans. And that's supposed to save us about $40 billion between 2010 and 2019 to help pay for some of the additional services. The Act also mandates some new fraud and abuse initiatives, which, as you know, living in South Florida is a really hot-button topic. There are some new task forces, there are some new oversight and advisory boards that are scheduled to be put together under the Act so that we're hopefully spending better and smarter on all of these Medicare and Medicaid programs and not losing a lot of money to fraud or erroneous claims, etc. You can't hear me? Louder?
No.
Oh, okay.
I can't hear her.
Oh.
Okay, I can hear one.
Okay, as long as you can hear me. Before we go on to this slide, I did forget to mention, I'm sure some of you have probably heard that on the 19th, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to repeal the Healthcare Reform Act, and that on the 31st, a district judge here in Florida declared the act unconstitutional. What you can take from that is that the act is under some scrutiny, but most people believe that the repeal bid probably won't have a lot of success. There are a lot of Democrats who control the Senate that support